Can you hear me? Okay, there we go.
There we go. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, I think it'll be just me for the Q&A, but we're lucky to have the composer from the film, Max Drummey, is here as well. So
Oh, wonderful.
he's in the audience. Yeah. And thank you so much for being here, everybody. And the film is very close to finished. As you might imagine, there are a lot of names in the credits, and you didn't see the credits. So that's one of the things that we have for future screenings of the film. But hopefully this is a special chance to see the film right as it's coming into the home stretch.
And I've had some technical difficulties behind the scenes too, so my deepest apologies as well. And also, I owe an apology to all of our feature filmmakers. Today we have a tradition here that I completely forgot about all day long and suddenly remembered, oh no, and that is that for all of our feature films, we make a custom poster. So this is yours.
Thank you. This is so cool.
And so if
I should send this to my mom.
So if Sandy Cummings from Space Hope and Charity or Aaron from Midsummer Night's Dream in Prison and our other feature filmmakers are still around, we have a poster for all of you as well. It's out in the lobby, and again, my sincere stuff. Is it still a tradition if you completely forget that it exists?
Hey, we can start again now.
Well, Will, thank you so much for submitting your film and being a part of our film festival. This film is so fascinating, and for our audience as well, as a reminder, we have microphone there. If you have a question for Will, this film, interpreting scripts, and when it's not your own, and trying to take that on and determine, because a script only describes so much, and it still leaves a director an opportunity for interpretation. Do you feel like you gave Groovopolis justice in finding Groovopolis and the story that your father was trying to tell?
That's a good question. I knew from the beginning that I knew it was going to be a documentary, and I knew that that's where it felt like I was the right person to tell the story as the son of really it's like a story about me grieving, and this happened to be my side project, and I kind of used the script to make sense of my dad, and I just that was challenging. I thought it would be easier, of course, but I knew that's what I wanted to do, and luckily Jeff Pullman, the co-writer of Groovopolis, he was more than happy for me to do that, and he was very happy with the film. He still thinks that like this film is going to somehow lead to Groovopolis getting made, which I'm like, oh man, do you know how expensive it was just in time for me to like do this? Like maybe somehow like we'll do that one day. So I think I did justice to elements of Groovopolis, but I definitely had to make this story make as much sense as hopefully it does, which was I had to pick and choose the parts of my dad's unmade film that I felt like pushed this story along. So we did have to leave a few things out, but ultimately, I don't think we would have wanted like a 3-hour version of this. So
it's definitely a guilty pleasure of mine going deep down the rabbit hole sometimes of finding unfinished scripts or finished scripts of films that were never made to determine like if there's a really popular film and a sequel was written but never created, where the story was going. And sometimes they take really weird turns, and your dad's script I think is no exception of coming up with a very outside the box concept of things. But that's also what makes it fun to try to see, can I actually interpret this?
Oh yeah, like also what was sort of helpful about his script is that really the best scenes were kind of like in the first half of the script, and then in the script I think the music winds up being used by a corrupt politician, and there's like a hologram, and like they like break the hologram, and it was just like, this is so expensive and also doesn't make sense, and we're gonna pick the scenes that make sense and that they kind of had finished and that feel good, and kind of make it work that way. But yeah, it's we knew also with this script that it wasn't just not made, it really was, it was not really finished. Like as you saw like what was going on in my dad's life with my family, I think things got complicated, and I learned that it's complicated to make a film. So we even joked that my son was going to make this film. If this film never got made, he was going to find this and call it Finding Groovopolis. So I'm glad that didn't happen.
Music does play such an important part in this, and music was a centerpiece of the original script concept that your dad was working on. But since it was a script that you had to work with and your dad was not there to provide guidance, how difficult was it to pick the music that went into the film?
Yeah, like my dad, I love music. I love all different kinds of music, and so I did get I think Jeff Pullman dropped a bunch of MP3s in a Dropbox folder, and I listened to them, and they were interesting, but they had this like kind of world music quality that, let's say I had just like dropped that in this film, it would be pretty strange, and I would feel maybe, I don't know, I'm not like the right person to navigate that. So what we did is we kind of drew on all these influences that we thought made sense. And then I was very lucky to have Max kind of pace the music so that it builds. And then when you see that final flash mob, that Groovopolis theme kind of comes to life. But as much as the film is about music, we knew we were trying to tell a story that was bigger than just having cool music. And so we actually tried to stay away from just like finding the cool. There was a lot of pressure to be like, well, what's the song he's going to hear on the island that just influences everybody forever and makes them
Can
happy?
You find that perfect piece of music?
Yeah, we got close in influences, but no, we didn't. We never found that perfect music. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Bill Withers, I don't know.
We have a question over here.
Sure.
Hi, I was just wondering, first of all, Virginia's quite the character, and I was just wondering, has your mom seen this and what she thinks about it? Because she seems a little bit hesitant to discuss your family background.
Yes, thank you for the question. My mom has seen the film, and she bawled. She told me she appreciated it. We watched it. We finished it at 2 a.m. during a busy moment right before her house was getting full of people, and I think she processed it, and then the next day she told me she was really proud and good job. And then, I think 2 weeks later she texted me and she's like, she focused on she's like, just so you know, I didn't meet your dad on a layover in Denver. I was doing costume design on these these productions there, and I was like, yeah, I know, but technically you're stopping over. So she focused on, I think, less controversial aspects of the film. And then, I think for my mom, she definitely knew I was working on this for a very long time. She had no idea that I went and met my half brother and that element was there. But by the time I got through this, she I think understood that this was really about grieving for me and trying to understand the things that I couldn't talk to my dad about when he was alive. So, with the passage of time, those things become easier, and we actually had some more fun moments with my mom, but we did have to cut them from the film. So maybe one day that'll see the light of day.
That is an interesting topic that, we've had several films today that focused on deeply personal films about family or close friends today. And as filmmakers, we want to tell stories and we want to be creative. But then when you're telling a story that is as deeply personal to you, there's the whole issue of what to cut, right? Because just so that this doesn't turn into a 4-hour-long film with the full backstory of every nuance, which if it's personal to us, we can think of, oh, well, that's a super important memory from when I was a kid, but is it really relevant to the story? So how difficult when it's your life and your family to sit down and realize maybe we don't need that aspect in this story to still tell the bigger story?
Yeah, it's, it is tricky. Also, when my dad died, we had a memorial, and it's probably the most I ever edited in one night because I just pulled an all-nighter and cut something 18 hours of all those VHS tapes into a 1-hour thing. But that's really a different audience. That's my family, just for my family. And with this, I knew, I wanted to feature them, but I needed to feature them in a way that hopefully tried to answer the questions I was posing. And I did really try to make it through the lens of Groovopolis. So to me in Groovopolis, there were the themes of relationships, but there was also this theme of this character who was just very rigid, who was very by the book, very much not like my dad at all. Like this character was, he would calculate, he would like look at the dance moves on the dance floor and kind of calculate like the math behind their dance moves. So this wasn't my dad. And so I would look at the script and then try to figure out, well, in those interviews that I did, I think other people talked about this today who are doing personal docs. I think maybe it was Reed from Sam Now, but in those, when I'm meeting my dad's friends and partners and people from his life, like I'm not really just meeting them for this film. I think what Reed said was it's easier to be like, hey, let's meet and talk about the film instead of like, let's talk about the pain in our family, right? And when he said that, I was like, yeah, 100%. Like, so I could be like, okay, Lena, I want to do this film project and I want to talk to you, but when we, by the time we sat down, it's like, we have a lot to talk about. But then when it came time to edit the film, I really focused in on like, what was it that my dad struggled so much about? Why was he not holding down the jobs? What was that about? And, later, I guess I would find out that in a little bit more specificity what was going on health-wise. So yeah, I tried to use Groovopolis to choose what to edit, even though we, so many conversations with family went into getting kind of source material for this project.
Yeah. I do also need to ask about the art of a good mixtape too, because mixtape is an element in the course of the film. As someone who still has a stack of old audio cassettes that I made in the 90s for car rides, I feel like I developed an art to a quality mixtape. And in the film, it does touch on like finding the ultimate mixtape that is very sentimental and connected. So I feel like John Cusack and High Fidelity did a great job of describing what goes into a mixtape, but maybe you can give your own spin on what makes a good mixtape.
Oh man, I feel like we should ask Max that question too. But my buddy Chester's here too, who was a test screener who helped make good notes on this film. So one thing I'll just say about the mixtape that we found, I did a Kickstarter for this film way back in 2015, like learning. I thought it was going to be a short film, I thought it was going to be pretty different. And sharing that mixtape, I uploaded the whole thing and I kind of set up a website where the tape deck just spins and you could listen to the mixtape. And that was one of my Kickstarter rewards. And I don't know if this guidance will help you in terms of picking the best songs for a mixtape, but what I can tell you about that mixtape is that it was just kind of so iconic to that point in time and driving in my dad's convertible and so influential on us, like infected us in this subconscious way that, when I read the Groovopolis script and I was like, oh, there's a tape that infects people, I immediately was like, that's like the tape my dad had. How can I tell this story in a way that I could weave those two things together? And that's kind of also, I knew it was going to be a documentary. Like, I'm not just making Groovopolis. Making a good mixtape, you got to have a strong prompt. You don't want it to be all over the place. A theme of some kind, and I guess know when to stop it. Too. Like, I guess if it's literally a mixtape, you got to plan side A and B. That's important. Actually, Chester and I have a tradition every year where we make a mixtape at the end of every single year with our favorite songs from the year. So we keep the art of the mixtape alive.
That's fantastic. So your dad being an actor for years, had he written other scripts? Had he been a writer as well as an actor? Because that doesn't really necessarily show up in the film, unless you've made that saying that hit the cutting room floor.
Right. He had collaborated with Jeff on not a lot of other stuff. My dad primarily wrote poetry, and then Jeff Pullman had written a script for a film that I think he's had a film made. It's on IMDb. It's it did okay, but because he had a film made, it's like now more films can get made. It's hard nowadays, but that's what he's believing. But my dad was more poet, actor, and kind of community theater director.
So the Terminator being his most prominent role, but appearing in so many things, where I'm curious about is why delve into this sci-fi concept? Like, what triggered it? What was the origin that made him decide, of all the potential stories he could write or collaborate with Jeff, why did this one bubble to the surface and be enough of a motivation to be like, you know what, I'm going to write a script about this concept?
I feel like these guys were just like hanging out in LA in the early 90s, like smoking weed and listening to music, and then being like, also talking about how acting and writing. And they were just like, well, and by the way, I'm guessing they were smoking weed. I don't really know. But, yeah, I think it was like a byproduct of them hanging out. I don't know. In a weird way, it's almost like this film maybe was like a byproduct of like my grieving and trying to heal. I'm like, I think I could do this. I think I could find something in this. And I'm like ready to get this out now. Like I'm ready to go do something else. But I feel like maybe them writing that script possibly was a byproduct of what was going on for them at the time in the early 90s. And especially, coming to learn that like my dad wasn't really like a stable, home life or work life. I think the script was probably an escape and fun for them to do. And they love music. They were laughing a lot. They wanted to do this comedy, and that's what happened.
So this film falls into a similar theme that we've had today, which has been coping with grief, as well with several of our feature films. So from the filmmaker's standpoint, your subject, while you're grieving, was it therapeutic for you to be able to go through this process, or did it just bring up more?
I think I would say mixed bag. But at this point, at the time I was going through it, I don't know if I would have said yes. It was therapeutic, but now, now I would say it definitely was. I was actually thinking about this, like if I hadn't gone and met these people from my dad's life, if I hadn't used the film as an excuse to go have these tough conversations that we just never had, I feel like it would be stuck. I feel like I wouldn't have been able to fully kind of accelerate the healing process. So for me, it's like, that's a big part of this. I watched so many personal documentaries on sometimes very tough subjects. I ate them up. They were my inspiration. And so for me, my hope is, I never want anyone young to have to go through something like the loss of a parent, but of course it happens. It's going to happen. Not just parents, all kinds of loss. And, my hope is that it's like not depressing, but encouraging to see, I think it's like healing through trauma-informed narratives is like a way I've heard it put. And it's like, it can be inspiring to see how other people are going through it.
So we got to know some of your family and extended family, and there's quite a few interesting characters in that group, and just some of what we saw on screen was hilarious, but you hinted at some things that got cut that, for just narrative reasons weren't necessarily to be in. But so what's maybe either an outtake or blooper or something that stands out as that's absolutely hilarious, but it doesn't fit the narrative from compiling all of this that you can maybe share with us, or maybe just a favorite memory in general of the production process?
Yeah, I'll share one. So when we were getting ready to shoot the film, the narrative scenes from Groovopolis, we asked all the actors, because they read like the whole script, and we said, we're deciding which scenes we're going to do, and I had picked a number of them, and we asked, are there any that we hadn't picked that you really want to do? And they all said the grapefruit scene. I was like, okay, I guess we're going to do the grapefruit scene. And the grapefruit scene is really fun. It's a scene where Philip comes to work and he throws a bunch of fruit to everyone that works there, and he holds up the grapefruit and he like rips it open and it's dripping everywhere, and his boss gets really pissed and he's like, what are you doing? Like, get back to work. And it's fun, and ultimately I think it just like took us out of the story in that moment, and we kind of couldn't make it work, but it's a nice scene, and like Max did amazing music for it too. So yeah.
There's a sort of loving cheesiness to the dance sequences in this film, and you even hint at it a little bit with the film Footloose and other 80s films that are At the time, they were great, and we can look at them, and there's the nostalgia associated, but we also watch, we're like, that really didn't age very well. So directing some of those dance sequences and trying to get people to not just burst out laughing had to have been a little bit difficult, right? With just some of the absurdity of the scenario.
Well, yeah, I was very lucky because I, definitely didn't have a big crew, but a lot of friends that were champions. And I have a friend, Merrill Merman, who's based in New Orleans, and a friend, Lee Wilmuth, and they're based in Portland. And they choreographed, so Merrill choreographed what happened on the island when they first heard the music, and they're, it's kind of trippy, and they're passing fruit around. She choreographed that, and then Lee choreographed the flash mob. But you know what they did? The choreographers that was really artful is they looked at this footage of my dad. So like when my dad's dancing to Paul Simon and he's being goofy, Lee modeled what Philip would do, and then ultimately the flash mob on this kind of, it's okay to be free, be silly, hopefully not like overt, ridiculous laughing, but just kind of like, we're being free. Like the music just infected us, and now we can do what we want, and we won't get laughed at, or if we do, we don't care. The interesting thing is too, in the script, like they were more productive at work after they got infected with the music. So it's kind of ridiculous. Like they're typing on computers and there's no screen, and like it doesn't really make sense. But the point was that the boss couldn't see that they're actually being more productive because he was too distracted by the fact that they're happy.
And we should note, the Portland film community is very collaborative. There's a lot of, cross-pollination between films. You mentioned earlier when you were asking a question to Don. We do have a friend of the festival that is in this film. Brian Sutherland has had several films, and he's visited in past years and has even helped us out with the film camp that we teach every summer.
Awesome.
So that it's wonderful to see familiar faces popping up in new films. Like, hey, he was part of our festival back before. So
we were driving through Klamath today, and I think I saw is it Point 5 or the tire company, and Brian was in like their Super Bowl ads this year. So I was like, oh, like Brian's going to be in the film later, and he was in their Super Bowl ads. Like you could see it out there. But that's really cool that he comes and does that, and that you do that camp.
So takeaways from this film. It's not the most linear, direct story arc. There's a very lighthearted element to this, but it's also a film about grief and losing family, and also discovering more about your family. So what do you hope that viewers take away from this film that you've created?
I've thought about this a lot, and at first I really thought that maybe could it be motivating to people to maybe try to have those hard conversations before your loved one is gone. That's what I thought. I thought maybe it could do that. But like, would it inspire me to have done that? I'm not sure, because it would have been really difficult, to go meet Lena and Josh if my dad was around. It just would. So I want to say that aspirationally, but I don't know if that's sincere. What I would say is grief looks different on everyone. Healing is important. It takes time. And for me, that looked like, pouring 8 years into a project and roping in all my friends and, eventually making sense of it incrementally and then feeling like I almost sort of like, I'm good on the grief stuff. Now I just got to like finish the film. That's, so, I think that would be my message, is that, as silly as it might seem at times, find that lens through which you can understand someone after they're gone. And, in the moment where it's calling to you, like go where it's warm, explore it, and maybe you can learn things about that loved one even after they're gone.
Wonderful. Well, Wil, thank you so much for being a part of the Klamath Independent Film Festival. Thank you for traveling and bringing your own little entourage with you as well. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you to all of you who have stuck with us all day. I know watching 6 feature films in a single day is a very large task, but we hope you've had a wonderful day. We hope to see all of you tomorrow for all of our short films and our awards ceremony tomorrow evening. So please stick around for that. And we are not done. So all of our filmmakers and friends who are in the house, we would like to invite all of you. Every year we like to have a little after party and a good opportunity to network and get a chance to get to know your filmmakers in a very casual setting. So we're going to go about a block away, just in that general direction down to Main Street, to the Basin Martini Bar. So great food, great drinks. We would love to see all of you there. So if you could, if you want to hang around for a few minutes, but we'd love if everyone could start heading towards the Basin Martini Bar for a late dinner and drinks. And hopefully we see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. for our K through college films. And Wil, again, thank you so much for being a part of KIFF. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for having
How
us.
about a hand for Wil Kristin and Finding Groovopolis?